Yes, Kansas State does lose a lot. They lose the heart and soul, which makes the pain of losing a first-round game in an upset all the more devastating for the way the Wildcats lost. But I noticed right after the championship game, within 24 hours, this happens every year, people put out their way too early top 25s, right? And this was Kansas at the time with Grimes and Dotson back. I think there was an acknowledgement that Azubuike was not going to be back and the Lawsons weren't going to be back. But I think you could make a case, Kansas top 15 with Grimes and Dotson back. Now, with those two uncertain, Grimes, I think, was lost for good. He's just going to be gone.
He's going to be gone.
And let's just say Dotson's not back. I don't know if Kansas is a preseason top 25 team. And the only
probably on reputation.
Maybe it gets in early. Yeah. And the significance of that would be Kansas has a streak of 200 consecutive AP polls they've been ranked in. That's second all time. So the first time that they're out, they obviously lose that streak. Kansas State, I think, showed up in one of them, but there weren't other Big 12 teams. Maybe Texas Tech, just because of what they had just accomplished. I don't think the Big 12 looks on paper to be a terrific league next year. There's just a lot of unknowns going into next season. It might have to be a newcomer league for the Big 12 because if you look at they're all conference teams, their first and second team. I think just about everybody from those teams are gone.
Missouri, I think an interesting and important year for Cuonzo Martin next year. It hasn't gone great for him either from the standpoint of, they made an NCAA tournament this year, no tournament play, disappointing season, not unexpectedly disappointing, terrible luck with injuries so far. But hey, year 3, I mean, if they have a bad year, I mean, it's going to start to look like the previous stops maybe for Cuonzo Martin. So I think a pivotal year coming up.
I think so too. I'm kind of willing to give him a bit of a pass on this year just because of the DeJounte Porter, the unexpected injury to DeJounte Porter. All injuries are unexpected, of course. But for the second straight year to lose your best player in the preseason, and I thought Cuonzo built up equity in this first year by getting that team to the tournament, riding Cassius Robertson and others to the tournament unexpectedly after losing the best player. And then this year just ended, it was just a slog getting through this year without Porter and finishing in the bottom, the 11th seed in the SEC tournament, something like that. So, that does set up an important next season. They're down a player now with KJ Santos deciding not to return, deciding to transfer. But I saw enough from this year's team, especially the freshman guards, that to have me encouraged. Now, they do have a top recruit, a power forward coming in, but Porter re-injuring his knee, kind of makes a decision. He's not going to be available for anybody, whether he comes back to Missouri or goes to the NBA. That's another, year of rehab for him. So it's a kind of a lost year for him. So what's Tillman going to do? Is Jeremiah Tillman going to? I think he's back, and if he comes back, that's a nice piece to build around for Missouri. I think for Missouri, I look at them to improve, to take the next step, and I need to know more to wonder if it's a tournament team or not. I'm not there yet for Missouri.
And I guess the dirty little secret also is that the SEC all of a sudden is turning it's a monster. Yeah.
Yep. I mean, as we saw in the NCAA tournament, as we saw in Kansas City in the Midwest Region Final, Auburn and Kentucky duking it out. So, and Tennessee spent 6 weeks at number 1 this year and couldn't get out of the Sweet 16. Yeah, it is. They're just hiring terrific coaches in that league. And how about Rick Barnes deciding to pass up UCLA to stay at Tennessee? So that they've gotten great coaches in the SEC. They've always had the athletes, and now they're kind of putting those two elements together: great athletes and great coaches.
Talk about promise and the spring training of football. And from an emotional standpoint, in referencing baseball, everything's positive in spring training. Even if you're a team that everybody knows is going to be terrible, it always looks better in the spring. Spring football's kind of like that as well. And let's start with the story at Kansas because it was interesting to hear. Jesse Newell wrote a thing in the Star about 5 points from that, and one of them was that the Les Miles effect and the enthusiasm brought, and him pointing out that basically that night, now they had a rap concert afterwards.
Yes.
But the atmosphere there was better than for many games last year.
Absolutely. When I saw a photograph on social media of the press box side of the stadium, and to see seats occupied up toward the press box because there weren't seats available down below, I thought that's something different that you haven't seen. And yes, the concert accounts for probably a lot of that, but it's still, that's what a good idea to have it at night,
right.
Make it an occasion, new coach. It was all the elements were there to create an atmosphere, and Kansas did. On the field, I just coming out of last season, I thought, well, at least Kansas is going to have Carter Stanley back at quarterback, and it turns out he's not going to be the guy. The Pitt transfer,
right? McVitie,
McVitie looks like he's the guy. Good size kid, 6'5".
Right.
I don't know.
And that's so important. Kansas hasn't had good quarterback play since Reesing, basically, and that kills you.
It in college, well, any football, but especially in college, especially in the Big 12, where
you got to score.
You have to score, absolutely. Or if you've got to be primo at keeping other teams from scoring, and not many people. Nobody does that. Occasionally you get a good defensive team, but yeah, you've got to have a quarterback. And Kansas, somewhat like Texas, hasn't had that quarterback in about 10 years. Texas seems to have one now with Sam Ehlinger, not to be confused with Sam Mellinger of the Star. And we'll see if McVitie is the guy for KU.
Quarterback obviously will be a issue for Missouri, but seemingly, especially off an encouraging spring game, as we talk about optimism, Kelly Bryant had some good deep throws, good medium throws, a windy day. But anything you do is sort of positive and that type of thing. But they did get a significant transfer to come in. They look like they have a guy who played at an upper level program. So it seems like they certainly shouldn't have bad quarterback play.
No, and they won't. Kelly Bryant has played at the highest, played in the championship, not the title game. He played in the semifinal. The bowl loss to Auburn or to Alabama a couple years ago. But no, they don't take not a big step back at all at that position. Now, keep this in mind. He looked great on Saturday,
right?
But and schools are smart to do this. They script it so the new quarterback always looks good. You have to do that for your fans. That's important. You don't want the commentary coming out of spring football with a new quarterback to be, oh my gosh,
he threw 5 picks.
What are we going to do? We got to start over at quarterback. So, hats off to Barry Odom and to Missouri to help that process. Still, but you're right, Danny. He was Clemson's starting quarterback for an ACC championship team. They're not going to drop off much. They're going to be different, but they're not going to drop off much at that position. The question now is, can the appeal process work for Missouri and get them into the postseason? This is a postseason team. Missouri is going to start in preseason top 25s, and when there's that expectation, you look forward to the next game, and you're always talking about what the bowl game is going to end up being. Do we have a chance to win the division, and who would we play in the conference championship game, and what bowl might be available? You don't want to lose that conversation. So Missouri, that's the next big step, is the appeal process.
Do you have any feel or in people you talk to or anything else about this appeal process? In my mind, just from 50,000 feet, it doesn't look great to me. But
appeals don't often work for NCAA sanctions. Kansas is dealing with theirs with Silvio De Sousa, that appeal with the eligibility. And Missouri with this, the Missouri argument, of course, is they cooperated fully. They not only cooperated fully, they identified the problem and went to the NCAA with the problem. And so shouldn't there be should that not have been taken into consideration when handing out the punishment? And the response from the NCAA was, this fit under this category of in our punishment grid. We gave you what has been assigned and prescribed from rules agreed upon by the membership of which you're a member. So I don't know. I'm not. I tell Missouri fans, just as I tell Kansas fans, don't be hopeful. And if it happens, then you're overjoyed. And if it doesn't happen, you haven't invested too much emotion in it. And
finally, K-State. Somebody asked me the other day, just a fan at some setting, who's going to win more games the next 5 years, who's going to be better in the next 5 years, Kansas or Kansas State, and I just said I just think because of the culture Kansas State, I'll pick Kansas State. Even though I think Les Miles will make Kansas respectable again, get to some bowl games, I think Kansas football will rise up from this muck that they're in right now. But Kansas State football really matters to Kansas State people. So there's an inherent pressure there. Kleinman's a proven winner. You see things like a running back from Ball State going there just because Kleinman said he hadn't even seen K-State when he walked on campus, but he said, that's the guy I want to play with. I want to play Power 5 football. I think all those indications to me would be positive for Kansas State. But we haven't seen anybody win at Kansas State also except Bill Snyder. But we only had one other example,
right.
but that was certainly also promising as well.
But that's a great example because we saw him in the middle of Bill Snyder, right? So we gave him. He had, Ron Prince had, everything that Bill Snyder had built, and he couldn't win with it. And then Bill Snyder took over what Ron Prince left him and won with it. So it's actually kind of I think a really good example of how difficult it's been for anybody other than Bill Snyder to win there. But every point you make is a good one, Danny, I think. But there is a culture at Kansas State, a football culture there that is that's part of winning and an expectation. There's an expectation to win football games at Kansas State. And if that doesn't happen, fans will get angry, and Kansas State will have to react like places with expectations react. Change the coach, they
right.
Do something drastic. So there's a greater pressure on Chris Klieman at Kansas State than there is on Les Miles at Kansas. And I think Kansas State will respond to that. I'm not sure we're in for there are a lot of issues that they've got to address and holes to fix this year at K-State. I'm not sure we're looking at a bowl team at Kansas State. If we are, I think it's borderline bowl. And I say that because not just for what Kansas State is, but with the rest of the conference. New coaches at 4 of the programs, KU, K-State, West Virginia, and Texas Tech. So I think you automatically kind of slot those teams as the bottom 4 in the league behind the more established coaches and teams with the quarterbacks that are more familiar. But Skylar Thompson's back for Kansas State.
Right.
That's a plus for Chris Klieman. I agree with you. If I had to say, 5 years from now, I'd say Kansas State is still more wins than KU in football, but it would probably be closer than in any other 5-year period. It would just be my guess.
And in closing things out, just back to basketball for a second. We're about to embark on another spring-summer of trials as we move to Nike now. Starting next college basketball season, will we be in a better or worse place in the land of college basketball?
I'll say better because if nothing else changes, we'll be more aware of things. Then we'll be smarter about the way the process works than we were, say, year and a half, 2 years ago. You can think what you do about Michael Avenatti and his reputation, who he's represented, all that. But he had the goods. He's got the proof that there was some under the table stuff going on with Zion Williamson's mother, and that has to be addressed by the NCAA. I think it has to be addressed by the NCAA. I hope it is, and. When he says in a tweet that I forgot the exact number, if it was 50 or 75 others, he had already exposed DeAndre Ayton at Arizona and Bol, our own Bol
right.
At Oregon, and now Zion Williamson's mother. Those are the 3 that have been out there most prominently. But there are others. There is we're talking about the culture of Kansas State football. There's absolutely a culture problem in men's college basketball. And we all fought it, and we all believed it, and we knew some of it through the great reporting of people like Dan Wetzel and Pat Forty and all. But now it's out there it's on wiretap, it's on court documents. Now it's out there, it's proof, and it's up to the colleges and the NCAA to determine what they want that sport to look like and be like. Now, having covered the Final Four last week with 3 of the 4 teams there are non-brand name. Michigan
right.
State was the brand. Auburn, Texas Tech, Virginia, the non-brand names. I don't know if I could have enjoyed a Final Four, the competition, more than I did, Do we have to have Kentucky and Duke and Kansas and North Carolina in the Final Four every year to enjoy it? I don't know if we do or not.